appointees and officials of the Ghanaian public sector has been, well, a long time a desire for many Ghanaians. And now President John Mahama has responded by, launching the Code of Conduct for quote-unquote ministers. All right. Now, one thing that this document has caught the attention of Ghanaians with is the issue of gifts. Gifts. By the way, we are also wondering, what does the Code of Conduct for ministers also mean for the Conduct of Public Officers Bill, also known as the COPO Bill? You remember that one? Yes. So what does this mean for that, I wonder? We raise these questions and more today on the Super Morning Show. Stay with us. It's Corruption Watch. Now, listen, this morning we will dissect and compare the Code of Conduct launched by the President and that of the countries like Uganda, Rwanda, Ivory Coast, as well as also do a comparative analysis of the COPO Bill and the code that has been launched by President John Dramani Mahama. It's Corruption Watch. You're very welcome to it right here on the Super Morning Show. Now, Corruption Watch is sponsored by the European Union in collaboration with partners like Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Transparency International Ghana, formerly known as Ghana Integrity Initiative, Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, GACC, Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ASILA, and of course, media platforms Joy FM and Adum FM. All right, now, as you already know, right here on Corruption Watch, we raise debates and thought-provoking conversations about pertinent governance topics. And today, we're going to feature the segment that we call Just Like Us. Now, this segment is what we use to conduct comparative analysis of practices in Ghana and other countries. And by this, we advance public policy advocacy and, of course, demand policy reform. So, this morning, we'll be joined by Ambassador Anna Bosman, formerly the ambassador to France, Portugal, and UNESCO. In addition, she is a former commissioner of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ. We will also have Mr. Michael Bwedi, who is a fundraising manager at Transparency International Ghana, formerly Ghana Integrity Initiative. And then we will hear from Dr. Sarah Birete. She's executive director of the Center for Constitutional Governance in Uganda. She's going to join us via Zoom. Now, you may have heard the president has outdoored a code of conduct for ministers. Now, according to the code, for the avoidance of doubt, the term minister includes deputy ministers, presidential staffers, chief executive officers and their deputies, as well as officers of state and parastatal institutions, not forgetting members of the Council of State and other political appointees in the executive arm of government. Now, let's listen to what President Mahama actually said at the launch of this code. It happened on the 6th of May, 2025. Listen to this.
In my 120-day social contract with the people of Ghana, I pledged to restore discipline, integrity, and accountability into our governance. Today, we're taking an important step towards fulfilling that promise with the official launch of the Code of Conduct for Political Appointees. This code represents a bold declaration of the standards we must uphold as servants of the public. It reflects our commitment to build a government that is ethical, responsive, and worthy of the people's trust. Let me be clear. This document is not a ceremonial one. It is a living and enforceable framework that outlines what is expected of every individual appointed under this administration. Why do we need a code of conduct? Because we must build a new political culture, one that is rooted in transparency, humility, and ethical leadership. Ghanaians deserve leaders who serve with honor and put the public interest ahead of their personal gain. This code is designed to guide our actions and decision-making and to make clear the consequences that will happen when we fall short. Any situation that creates a conflict between your personal interest and your official duties must be avoided or disclosed. We all know our cultural fondness for gifts, but we must now draw a clear line between appreciation and influence. Appointees are prohibited from accepting gifts or favors, especially from companies or individuals with interest in governmental decisions. If a gift is received during an official engagement and its estimated value exceeds 20,000 Ghana cedis, it must be declared. And upon leaving office, the gift must be surrendered unless expressly permitted to retain it by the president.
So you heard President Mahama there speaking to the Code of Conduct for Ministers, which he launched on the 6th of May this year. All right. Now, in sections 1.5.12 and 1.5.13 of the Code of Conduct, the matter of gifts and hampers is addressed. Okay. Now, on gifts, the code states, and let me quote, to avoid the creation or appearance of an obligation, a gift in cash or kind are not to be solicited or accepted from commercial enterprises or any other organizations. An exception to this rule is the acceptance of a gift or presented during an official visit to an institution. The code also states that, quote, where the minister wishes to retain gifts received, he may do so only if the estimated value does not exceed 20,000 Ghana cedis. All right. Now, wherever a matter of such importance comes up, we ask the simple question, what is the best practice? How is it done in other parts of the world, in other countries, especially those in other parts of Africa? All right. So today our guests are going to help us answer these important questions and more. But before we get to our guests, Kojo Akoto has some details that we've gathered on other countries and their practice of this particular provision in the
Yes, and Kojo, you know, as you may be aware, in Ghana we like to compare ourselves to countries such as Nigeria. So football will compare, infrastructure will compare, Jollof will compare. There's also Rwanda, there is Ivory Coast, and our scan across the African continent shows that in Rwanda, public officers are allowed to accept gifts with values less than $70. In fact, Rwanda was the first African country I visited. Made a lot of friends I still keep in touch with. So we always try to compare notes and see how things are going. So that $70 is about 870 Ghana cedis at the current exchange rate. It may be lower tomorrow if the cedi still keeps appreciating against the dollar. Now, still in East Africa, the Kenyan Leadership and Integrity Regulations stipulates in Section 5 that the public service officer may receive non-monetary gifts not exceeding the value of 20,000 shillings. That amount is the equivalent of about $150 or about 1,900 Ghanaian cedis. In addition, the Kenyan regulation says the officer must declare the gift and the gift must be recorded in a gift register. Also, in East Africa, the Ugandan Leadership Code Act 2002 provides in Section 10 that a leader may accept a personal gift or donation from a relative or personal friend to such an extent and on such occasion as is recognized by custom. And notwithstanding the provisions of this section, a leader may accept a gift if the gift is in the nature of a souvenir or ornament and does not exceed 5 currency points in value. Now, you may be wondering what a currency point is. A currency point is worth 20,000 Ugandan shillings. Therefore, 5 currency points is equal to 100,000 Ugandan shillings, the equivalent of about 340 Ghanaian cedis or 28 US dollars. You see that value?
Wow.
Yes, ours is 20,000, right? Now,
Yes.
this is 100,000 Ugandan shillings, the equivalent of 340 Ghanaian cedis or 28 US dollars.
And this
Now-
includes gifts from family members
Yes.
on customary
Yes.
occasions.
Now let's come to our neighboring Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast and Ghana, there we are one. In Ivory Coast, the legal regime governing gifts is determined by the decree of the Council of Ministers. The decree provides that the acceptance by the agent of the public treasury of any favor, gift, remuneration, or hospitality offered by suppliers and service providers or any other outside organization in connection with the public treasury is prohibited, except in the following circumstances. 1. Gifts or donations offered in connection with conventional social events, birthdays, weddings, childbirths, deaths, promotions, holidays, or religious rites. B. Hospitality offered as part of official events, conference, training, fair, forum, product presentation, etc., organized by the partners. However, the monetary value of the hospitality for a given employee must not exceed the amount granted to other participants in the same socio-professional category. So, just like us, these are what the other countries are doing. We are looking at $28 for Uganda. We are looking at some $150 in Kenya. You are looking at some $70 in Rwanda, and in Ivory Coast it's prohibited except for the instances that I mentioned. Kojo.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you for this. Now, listen, if you've just joined us, we're having a conversation on codes of conduct, including gift giving practices here in Ghana and in other countries. Okay, we will also be juxtaposing President Mahama's code of conduct with the proposed conduct of public officers law. And to help us with this, let's say good morning to our guests. We have here in the studio Ambassador Anna Bosman, former ambassador to France, Portugal, and UNESCO. She is also the former commissioner of SHRAJ, which is the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. Your Excellency, good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's very nice to have you. We have also with us Mr. Michael Bwedi. Now, Michael, of course, is the fundraising manager at Transparency International, Ghana, and that used to be Ghana Integrity Initiative. And Michael is here with us in the studio. How are you, Michael? Nice to see you.
Fine, thank you. Good to see you too.
Excellent. Thanks for making the time. We will be joined by Dr. Sarah Birete, Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance in Uganda, and she'll be joining us via Zoom. But let's get started here in the studio. And Dr. Bosman, it's been a while, so it's good to have you. But I wonder, have you been, paying attention, following some of the activities over the past few years here in the governance space? Has anything been occupying your time since you left SHRAJ?
Well, since I left SHRAJ, I was in the African Development Bank, also heading the Integrity and Anti-Corruption Department. And then, of course, after that, I went as an ambassador to France.
Yeah.
So, of course, my main preoccupation at those times were with the focus of what those institutions or what my role was. But yes, of course, I did of course, keep a little bit of tabs on what was happening in Ghana. And what I can say that really caught my attention, which I think it's a positive development, is that it looked very much to me like the civil society organizations, the NGOs, the media were trying very hard to hold government accountable and to make them transparent. So we had a lot of things that were happening. It seemed to me that our population, or the populace, was becoming more and more savvy to governance issues, to anti-corruption issues, and they were also creating a voice. And so that was, for me, I think that was something that was very edifying.
Well, it's good to know that at least from in the eyes of someone of your background, it seems that we are making some progress when it comes to holding government to account. That is positive. All right, well, let's get to the matter at hand, the code of conduct. And I'll start with you, Michael. Tell us, first of all, what your assessment is of the section in the code of conduct that addresses the acceptance and declaration of gifts.
Thank you very much, Kujo. Let me say that to do a fair assessment, it's important to premise the discussions on the principles that governs or regulates code of generally accepted principles. We're looking, and then here again, for the purpose of this discussion, I am looking at the principles as set out by Transparency International, and I guess it's also a fair principle because Transparency International is fairly known as an authority on the subject. So we look at the issues of clarity and specificity. This is important because when we are discussing the issues about gift, I would come back to it. Then we're also looking at issues of transparency and accountability. And then we look at the issues of training and capacity building relative to code of conduct. Now, the issue of clarity and specificity is important in the context of looking at the gift giving. And I say that if you take the provision or the section on gift and you test it by the principles of clarity and specificity, you would see that the code has inherent weaknesses. On the introduction to that section talks about you not accepting the gift at all, whether it is a cash or in kind, you should not. But then it goes forward and say that if you may, who won't? Because you see, if you read that section, the whole section, it talks about the fact that in public events it is not acceptable, it's not a good practice, you will offend the system, and therefore you have to collect it and declare. You would realize that the code is very heavy on the accountability and transparency component, but very weak on the issue of specificity and clarity, because it leans more on double standardness. You shouldn't, but if you may, but we know that we all will. Now the section goes forward to talk about the fact that if it exceeds 20,000, now materiality comes in. If you talk about 20,000, if you read the best practices that your earlier discussant also this they talked about, you realize that the values are very low. Are very low, and it's estimated that they are so low that it will hardly influence a public official.
Right.
Now we are talking about our situation where it is more than $1,000. We are talking about even at the current exchange rate, we are talking about something close to about $1,000, $3,000, $4,500. This figure is set thinking that, well, ministers, but we are talking about the ministers usaged in a general sense. Have you thought about the DCE in some remote community? What 20,000 means to that individual? So you may think that 20,000 in no way would compromise the appointees here in Accra or the big cities. But 20,000 is a whole lot of money to a DCE in some remote community, and that 20,000 can't compromise somebody. So these are the inherent weaknesses, particularly relative to the gift. Yes, the gift.
It's interesting.
Now, to go further, it talks about the fact that you should declare. Well, I come to let's as you then the provision assumes it will be a material gift. But what about cash? I come to declare, and then he says that if you would use it, then you must surrender. What if you have spent it? Are you talking about if it's cash and you've spent it? Are you going to refund the money at the end of your term? So these are some of the inherent weaknesses relative to the gift and the code of conduct.
Right.
I'm sure when we make progress, we will discuss how you juxtapose that to other. And
No
what
doubt.
the code of conduct. I say that if you take code of conduct, we have what we call the rule base and then the compliance base. The rule base are like, you would refer them to like the Nuremberg Code and the likes. They are more of one that sets standards of operation, and they are more administrative. And this is what this code of conduct seeks to achieve.
Right.
But it can't face the test of time. And it seems to have been made specifically for this regime, but are not looking beyond the regime. We'll talk about why it is necessary to look at the conduct.
We'll get
of
into all that. But I want to bring in Dr. Bosman. And before we hear you on the specific provision on gifts, I'm curious about your take generally on the president's decision to have a code of conduct for his appointees.
Well, I think that probably the intention to have a code of conduct, which really is an ethical standard that he's setting for his appointees, is a good one. But a code of conduct for ministers is just a set of ethical guidelines which they should follow, and principles that should apply. But when you think about the enforcement and where it looks like the enforcement of some of these clauses are going to be, say, at the discretion. When you read it, it's at the discretion of the president.
Yeah.
Then all of the points that Michael has brought up become really, really important for us to look at. Now, one would ask, yes, most institutions, most companies do have a set of guiding principles that they call, ethical standards, a code of conduct. But what is very important, these ministers are public servants. And therefore, there is the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. And that is the one that should be, first of all, it should be passed into law. It should come before Parliament and be passed into law. And that will make it much, 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 much easier, even for the President, to be able to, say, manage his appointees, because the appointees would also have to be under the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. And so Shraj, I believe, even this year, Shraj came up and really urged Parliament to pass this bill, which has been held in abeyance for such a long time. And Shraj itself did a lot of work on code of conduct. The problem for Shraj at that time was because it was not a law, it could not be enforced.
Yeah.
But a lot of the principles that are in the Conduct of Public Officers Bill have really been tested by GII. Well, you're not. Yes, GII.
TI.
And yes,
TI Ghana.
TI. Ghana. A lot of NGOs. And then it has also been tested against the international legal regimes that cover the conduct of public officers. So I believe that is what should be done, because as Michael pointed out, there are inherent weaknesses. I'm saying that the intention was very good, and it is true that a number of things that the president has put there, his appointees must follow. What he wants to do really is make it, that that these appointees behave in a manner that will help the public respect them and see them as they are, and they should also be respecting the public.
Right. Now, I think there are many who will agree with you that a bill would be superior to, the simple code of conduct. But do you think that the code of conduct in and of itself will have any impact on the fight against corruption? Will it have some influence on the behavior of public officers and appointees?
I think that it's limiting. I think that the code itself is limiting, and this is why we are pushing for the conduct of public officers bill to be passed into law, because the law brings out sanctions, it's enforceable. The code of conduct, as I said, and I repeat, intentions are good. There are certain things that are in there that I think is very important for political appointees, ministers and whatnot to follow. But it's also very important that when they fall short, that there should be some sanctioning. And if it's just administrative, etc., that is not enough. And that is why the bill must be passed into law. I really don't think that the code by itself is enough deterrence.
Right. Michael, let's activate the international part of Transparency International for a minute and ask about your experiences of how other countries have tackled the issue of conduct of public officers, and how does the President's Code of Conduct compare to other similar provisions from other countries?
Well, before I get there, can I quickly add to what Mom just said? I would say that the international best practice or what could stand the test of time is when you link your code of conduct to established statutes, so that you move away from an administrative sanctions. Why do I say that? And why is that principle the generally accepted principle? It is the principle because, one, if your code of conduct only prefers administrative sanction, then the motivation to comply diminishes. Why? Because, look, the reason why you will engage in corruption or anybody will commit a crime is when the benefits that will accrue to that individual for committing the crime is far more than the sanctions thereof. So if I know that by accepting a gift of, say, $100,000 or $1 million, all I get is to be sacked, I would go invest that 1 million. I'll take the 1 million, invest it in even government bonds, and then sit home and just reap the interest thereof. So really, what have you done? So we always talk about the fact that you must make corruption a high price and a low gain enterprise. But what this code of conduct, as we see, and which has been what most countries internationally are shying away from, is that this is more administrative.
Yes.
Deterrence is weak. The cost of non-compliance is relatively very low.
Very low.
You see, so we need to move the threshold, and that is where we come to the compliance base. Now, if you read the code of conduct as it is now, it doesn't even link it to the gift tax. There is no mention of the gift tax in it. I mean, so if you must, which the code of conduct says, then the most noble thing is that you don't only declare, you go ahead and pay the requisite gift tax. So then you have complied with the GRA a regulation or law on gifts. You understand me?
Yeah.
Failure to do that, then you can be taken to court, and then either whatever sanction thereof you face. So that linkage is missing, and that is what weakens, for instance, this current code of. However, I mean, if we take conflict of interest is at the heart of every corruption, public sector corruption. And the call for passing the code of conduct, as Madam had alluded to, passing the conduct of public officers bill, that now the conduct of public officers bill, if passed into law, will criminalize conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So therefore, when you engage in corruption, you are not only cited for that material or single, but you will also be cited for engaging in conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you are going to engage in any form of corruption, you think twice, right from the beginning. Right from the beginning, right when the thought drops into your head, when you are in the arena of perceived, conflict of interest, you quickly think about the consequences thereof before you even engage in that corruption. So internationally, people are legislating codes of conduct. They are looking at making it compliance based, so that the sanctions, so that there are prescribed sanctions to that individual. Look, I say this, that looks like more often than not, and we are praying that President Mahama would move away from that. We have always looked at the aesthetics of our politics and policies. What is it that if I do, the citizens will be happy? This code of conduct, the next administration, even if it's an NDC party succeeding, is likely to throw it away and do its own code of conduct. However, if we have a law, then no government will throw it away. The worst case scenario is it may be amended, but it will not be thrown away. So it is binding. So that is more generational thinking than to have one that is a regime thoughts. So that is the angle to which most civilized and most countries that wants to build their national integrity systems on solid foundations are going.
Right. Listen, if you just joined us, it's Corruption Watch. We're talking to Dr. Anna Bosman and Michael. Forgive me.
Thank you for giving me a doctorate.
I've been sharing free doctorates this morning. You are not the first recipient. I'm very sorry.
I'll take it.
My apologies. We've been talking to Anna Bosman and Michael Bwedi, and of course we're breaking down the President's Code of Conduct for public officers. Well, they call it for ministers, but it's supposed to apply to all government appointees. And we're breaking it down. We're learning what's good about it and what could be better. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll get into some interesting aspects of it. For example, let me read this to you. Okay, this is from paragraph 1 of the Code on Gifts. It says, and I quote, "Gifts in cash or kind are not to be solicited or accepted from commercial enterprises or any other organizations." Well, what does this mean for the presidency announcing that a company donated 2 electric cars to the president and that he has put them in the presidential pool of vehicles? Does this violate the president's own code of conduct? Let's talk about that. Also, why is it that the provision on gifts is only about receiving? What is the limit for how much a minister or government appointee can give? Did Agrada's gift, for example, exceed the limit or not? Right, let's get back to our conversation with Ambassador Anna Bosman and Mr. Michael Bwedi. Of course, Ambassador Bosman used to run SHRAD. She used to be the commissioner. And Michael Bwedi is in charge of fundraising at Transparency International Ghana. We've talked a lot so far about the code of conduct that has been launched by President John Dramani Mahama. We've taken the thoughts of our two guests on the provisions in there. But before the break, I promise you that when we come back, we'll start delving into some of the detail. And Ambassador Bosman, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. And just before the break, I read that section of the code that says in paragraph 1 that gifts in cash or kind are not to be solicited or accepted from commercial enterprises or any other organizations. So the question now is, how do we situate that within the context of the presidency announcing that a company donated 2 cars to the president and that he has put them in the presidential pool?
Well, first of all, I always come back to the Conduct of Public Officers Bill, because there's a section there which talks about the importance of checking. You have the duty to check your gifts that are going to be given to you. Now, in some institutions that I know, and some countries as well, what happens is that when a gift is going to be given to a head of state, or a gift is going to be given to a minister or to a higher ranking official, what it is it has to go through their ethics office, or they have somebody there, or protocol or something like that, which will now say whether or not they can take the gift. Okay, that's the first thing, and therefore they won't take it if there is a problem like that. If they think that there will be the perception that you're accepting the gift, and in return you're going to give something back to the gift giver. Now, yes, there are instances where perhaps you haven't gone through, let's say, your protocol or your ethics board. But what can be done in those matters is that, in the case, I don't know really the circumstances under which the president accepted this. I was not here and all that. I'm just coming to hear it now. But let's just take it that if you receive something like that, it would probably be much better in the eyes of the public if those things, or those, I think the cars, is it, electric cars that were given to you, instead of putting it back into the presidential pool, then you donate those to some charitable institution, somewhere where they need it. That would make it, because as you know, all this is perception. But if you did something like that and gave it, it would actually reduce the perception that, oh, you are yourself
benefiting.
Yes, getting some advantage from that. I believe that is one of these things that you have to look at. We have to set up, if it's not done already. For example, in UNESCO, anytime we're going to give a gift, even if it's a gift from the government, even we have to first of all take it through. We have to take it through the protocol ethical office, which will tell us whether or not she can accept it. The director can accept it. If she can accept it, they in turn will also prepare a gift of that same value to give back to us. That's what is done. Because yes, as Michael has pointed out, and as your other man has pointed out, the issues of conflict of interest, corruption, is always conflict of interest. So that is what we have to look at, and that is why we have to push for this bill to become law. You have the compliance, you have the enforcement, and you have the clear guidelines for all the public officers to adhere to. It's not only the ministers. It would have been a good thing, I think I said that before, if this law had come and that the president uses this law to now set out the ethical conduct for his minister or for his appointees, because then they'll refer back to the law. Any lacuna which would be in the code of conduct would be covered because the law has been passed.
Right. Yeah, I see that. So it seems as if this is a bit backward, that we have the code before the law.
Well, the thing is, as Michael has pointed out, this code lacks clarity in some parts of it. Okay, it lacks clarity. And you see, this is not just companies. We're not talking about companies, personnel in companies. We're talking about public servants. You see, for the public servants, the their test is much higher than that of, let's say, companies.
Yeah.
You know, and therefore, we have to. The code must be much stronger, much clearer in what it is trying to do.
Right.
And as we talked about, I think your man was talking about even the threshold. 20,000 is very high. When you look at what the law is saying, suddenly it goes against what the law is saying. Actually, the law doesn't make any provision. But what is clear is that something like 20,000. Somebody was talking to me the other day, and they said, "Oh, but 20,000. So every time I'll give something for 19,000 because I haven't reached 20,000. So I'll keep doing that, and I would not be, it wouldn't be something that I'm doing wrong. I'm giving 18,000, 19,000. I'll come back. I give 19,000, 18,000. No, the law is very clear. I mean, the bill is very clear on matters such as these.
Yeah, Michael, I want to hear you on this same issue of the 2 vehicle gifts. I wonder, does it actually violate even the president's code of conduct? Because first of all, it says in paragraph 1, don't solicit or accept any gifts. Then it says, even if you do, not more than 20,000. These are 2 vehicles. Certainly, they must be worth more than 20,000.
So you give it out.
Well, I think that on the lighter side, I'm surprised that anytime President Mahama is in office, people will give him gifts of cars.
They don't like to see him walk.
I'm surprised, but that's on the lighter side. But I think that the president accepting the 2 cars in the first place undermined his own code of conduct. Right from the onset, he undermined his own principles and standards that he has set for his appointees. And like they always say, he who goes to equity must go with clean hands. You cannot on one breath be accepting gifts of cars and on another breath forbid your appointees from accepting anything of value beyond 20,000. So that for me is a challenge. It's a difficulty that the president could have avoided. Then one would raise the issue, but I mean, he gave it out, so it cannot compromise him or influence him in any way. What people should not forget is that there is a stretch in, I think, 2016, the Ford saga. Stretch made some findings, and he said that the presidency breached the conflict of interest principle and the gift tax principle for accepting in ever. So there are lessons that exist that our leaders should have drawn from. So that also, in the second place, says a whole lot against the president accepting the gift. But he could have also handled it well, like Madame said. The president could have said, well, I appreciate the gesture, but I want you to donate this to an institution of need. The presidency has enough pool of cars that they don't need extra cars. What people don't know, or what we all take for granted, and I won't say that it's President Mahama or the government is an exception. We all do, and we are all guilty of that. We don't look beyond the immediate action. People give gifts, not necessarily to influence you, but also to gain some recognition and stature within society. I am close to the president. I have a friend. I mean, for such a person, if he jumps red lights and a policeman stops him, a policeman who may have seen that individual or that individual taking photos or presenting gifts to the president, immediately, immediately the policeman, shrinks. Because this is somebody who has influence, who has associations, who is a president's friend. We know what people do. Do you know who I am? They tout that, and immediately, public. So it may not necessarily influence the presidency, but we all know that we are living in a society where influence trickles down. It could influence other people who look up to the president or who work to the presidency. So in the face of it, it's like we can dismiss it. Well, the president gave it out, so he may not have directly benefited from it, but the perception, because you see, all the issues about code of conduct, ethics, and this thing, one cardinal principle is that it is supposed to breed trust. It's supposed to elevate trust, which in Ghana is a very, or Ghana's public sector is a very expensive commodity.
Yeah.
Now, if there is no clarity and certainty, the president is doing it anyway, well, how be it, he gave it out. He gave it out because he has a lot of cars. Perhaps if he did not have cars, he may have retained it. So
it's the presidential pool.
exactly. So exactly. So you are opening your own principle out to subjective interpretation of what you want to achieve. So to me, let me take it, let me declare it and use it. 4 years is a whole lot of time for a car to depreciate. If after 4 years I give it out, I probably could buy a new car anyway. So let me just take it, declare it, use it. After 4 years, I give it out.
Yeah. Michael, let me ask you this. I was asking before the break. Do you think this code should have been a bit louder on the rules around gifts that appointees can give?
I think the starting point is that we should have come from the legislative point of view, which Madam had talked to, the conduct of public officers.
Yeah.
Now, the conduct of public officers, we would have drawn linkages to establish, so the issue of lifestyle audits,
All of it would be.
and the issue about asset declaration. So now, you may not have an explicit code or explicit law that says that appointees cannot give gifts, but the gift you give out, does it commensurate with your income?
Right.
Some institution could be checking that. Some is, as we speak now, I mean, I'm sure you are alluding to the Sami Jemfi's gift. I'm sure the GRA should by now, if they are not already, on the tail of the recipient of the gift, for the gift tax to be paid. So if we have a law, then the law enforcement agencies now could link, so there is more comprehensiveness in the application of the statutes in dealing with corruption and other related offenses. But if you set up codes of conduct, it is weak. It doesn't. Who is enforcing the code of conduct? Is it President Mahama, who is now going to be enforcing the code of conduct? Is there an office which is checking? Is there an office of accountability? Is it a chief of staff who is saying that, well, as part of your KPIs, we will set indicators to mark and see how many of the codes of conduct have you violated? Are we going to have? And I always say that all the Article 71 appointees don't live in Accra, and therefore a lot could be going on beyond the reach of the presidency and the administration. And therefore you don't set up a framework that its enforcement becomes very difficult. As we have it now, we probably may not have averted our minds to how are we going to enforce this code of conduct beyond the people in Accra. But if you had a law, then the enforcement is in the hands of police people, is in the hands of, and we have SHRAJ offices in all over the district. We have police stations in all over the district, in all over the countries. So if we had a law enforcement agencies now take it from your intention and implement it.
Right.
The code of conduct, for me, I think it is very difficult and a hard sell when you think about enforceability.
Okay. I think I'll leave the final word to Ambassador Bosman. And I guess what I'm wondering is, since we all seem to agree that a law would be better, would you still recommend any changes to the code of conduct itself to make it a bit more effective in the interim while we work towards having a law passed?
What I would say, is I'm going to repeat it because I believe that the bill is ripe, is already ripe for passing. And if that bill is passed into law, there's so many things that have been written in the code which could be referenced by the law, would make it really, Michael, I wouldn't say that will make it, it would make it really not that relevant, I would say, So I think that the starting point should please pass the law. Okay, please pass the law. Because I believe the points that Michael has put out right now with the weakness, let's say the lacunas in the code will make it very difficult for our president to be able to really enforce it in the way that and manner which I think he intends to do. It will be very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah, very important point made there.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place to wrap this up, and I thank you both so much for your contributions to this conversation. I wish we had more time. There's so much more we could have touched on.
I think Michael
certainly
would like.
Can I, Michael? We have 30 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
Very well, thank you.
Okay.
I think that whilst we all push for the Code of Conduct of Public Officers Bill, I think that the draft and the bill as we have now should be brought out and subjected to more reviews, because there are critical things that we need to insert. The issue about shifting burden of proof. So you talked about the recipient and the giver, and if we could review the law and then shift the burden of proof so that we can have unexplained wealth order also inserted somewhere, I think it will enhance the issue of the Conduct of Public Officers Bill and other Code of Conduct. Thank you very much.
Critical.
Thank you so much.
Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ambassador Bosman. What a pleasure it's been to have you both in the studio on this one. And listen, Corruption Watch is not just done by us, it's done with you. So in our own small way, we can all help in the fight against corruption. Here's how you can interact with Corruption Watch. On social media, on Facebook, we are Corruption Watch Ghana. On X, formerly Twitter, we are at Corruption Watch. Or at CW Ghana, okay, or you can just type in Corruption Watch, it should come up. On Instagram, we are Corruption Watch _GH. On YouTube, we are Corruption Watch Ghana, and our website, as always, is cdd.org/corruption-watch-Ghana-CW. It's a mouthful, but you'll find us. On our phone numbers, of course, the hotline is 055 22 000 33. It's the same for WhatsApp, okay? 055 22 000 33. Our email address is sm@cw-ghana.org. And in all of your posting, use the hashtags Wanamoni and Ghana Abre. All right, those are the hashtags. Corruption Watch is brought to you by Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Transparency International Ghana, formerly known as Ghana Integrity Initiative, Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, GACC, the Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ASILA, and the media platforms, as always, are Joy FM and Adum FM. Corruption Watch is sponsored by the European Union.